All right, would the Education Committee please come to order? And at this time, I'd like to ask Chairman Nix, if he would, please open our meeting with prayer.
Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we come to you and just ask for the wisdom that we need to discuss the topics before us. Lord, we just pray now that you would give us the knowledge that we need, the understanding that we need to make the decisions that would be good for the state of Georgia. We thank you for all your blessings and for the opportunity to serve. In Christ's name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. As always, I want to remind everyone, please turn your phones off. We have a big crowd today. And turn your phones off. And if you have anyone up here you need to speak with or you need to get a message to, this is my administrative assistant here, Sheena. She will bring a message up to her, to my left, your right, and she will get it to one of the members of the committee, and they will come down and talk with you outside. So if you need to speak with someone, please do that. As always, as a tradition of the House Education Committee, we're always glad to have people here and new people. Do we have anyone here today that this is your first time you've ever attended an education meeting? And if you, let me see you. If are you teachers? Are you teachers or just visitors? We're glad to have you here. We do have a couple of special guests that I'd like to ask Representative Duggins to please, if you'll please introduce your special guest this time.
Mr. Chairman, I have two retired teachers who are here, happen also to be my parents. Jim and Annette Dudgeon are right there in the middle there.
Please stand up. Yeah, we're glad to have you.
My dad's a retired university professor. My mom's a longtime retired high school English teacher who actually started the IB program at the high school over in Alabama.
Well, y'all need to know that we all love this young man, and he's like a son to me. And I just think the world of him, and I appreciate him. And y'all done a good job raising him. I'll tell you that much. And that's why we need good parenting. Y'all been good parents, and I appreciate it. I bet you never had to discipline him, did you? He was always good. Yes, sir, Chairman.
But I will tell his mother I caught him one time with a dangling participle.
Miss Chairman,
that could have gone bad fast.
All right, and our other visitors, we're glad to have you. And any teachers here today, this is your first time, any teachers. We're always glad to have there you go. Where you teach? Yes, sir. Georgia State. Hey, that's a good one. We like that one. We're glad to have you all with us. Appreciate you being here today. All right, before we start, we have some of the Senate bills are coming across, and we have a couple of other pieces of House legislation that has been dropped. Probably won't make it across, but we'll probably give it a hearing. And so at this time, I'd like to ask our Vice Chair, Reverend Dudgeon, if you please to sign the bills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It happened since our last meeting, but just for the record, House Bill 1061 today is assigned to the full committee. We now have some fun Senate bills coming over. Senate Bill 309 by Senator Jones, which is the same bill we heard was Representative Strickland around Georgia High School and religious expression. Since we've already heard that bill once, we're assigning that straight to the full committee. So that's Senate Bill 309 to the full committee. We have House Resolution 1342 by Representative Douglas is going to academic support. Senate Bill 329 by Senator Tippins around dual credit diplomas for technical schools and high school students goes to academic achievement. And the other two bills we understand from the Senate are very likely to go over, and since they're important bills, I wanted to go ahead and assign them in case they do come from the Senate in the next couple of days before day 30. There's Senate Bill 348 by Senator Tippins around career academies, again to academic achievement, and Senate Bill 371 related to Title I funding to academic support. All those again by Senator Tippins. So the last two we expect to see very strongly, and we'll have those there ready to go and if they do cross from the Senate.
That's it. Very good. Okay. Any questions about the bill assignments from the chairpersons? Chairman, vice chairs, okay? At this time, we're going to recess the full committee, and I'm going to ask Chairwoman Valerie Clark to please reconvene her subcommittee and so that we can move a bill forward. So at this time, I call on Chairman Valerie Clark.
System does.
I believe that is true, Mr. Chairman.
Having served as a finance director in a local system, I don't know how you could take somebody and put them into that kind of a role and not have some training. School system accounting or school education and government budgeting is somewhat different from what you do at home. I mean, other than the fact that you got to balance it at the end, but learning all the different account numbers and how they interrelate and what the various regulations are, I'm in full support of this bill.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mayo, you know I support this bill, and as a person who about 15 years ago when I was helping open a little LEA startup charter school, I was asked to chair personnel, and the only experience I had was hiring and firing in my own little business. So I appreciate the need for this. I do have a question, though, on lines 51 through 54. I just need clarification. It says a leader, principal, or equivalent shall not serve simultaneously as a CFO. So who would be that? Are you saying that if you are the principal at school, you cannot also be its CFO?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes,
so who would, because in our case, our principal for the entire time just about was head of our finances. So who, for like a LEA, sort of a community startup school, who would that person be in your mind?
Right. So it could be a principal or director, and then the finance director may be called CFO or finance director or operations director, whomever would be responsible for managing the budget and making financial decisions.
But I guess that's my question. So in our case, we had such limited staff that our principal did manage our budget with approval of the board. So, but you're saying here that principal can't be that person.
That's right. That's
Under
right.
this bill, they couldn't, right?
So I guess I'm asking who would you? I mean, I guess you'd have to hire an additional person, or I mean, could it be say?
So you can-
It could be a volunteer, though,
It
right?
could be. Yeah, the responsibility would have to be assigned to someone other than the principal.
Or the leader or the founder.
Absolutely.
But
That's
can you just
correct.
give me your reasoning behind that?
Well, we have witnessed recently a case where the principal school leader also had a responsibility for making budgetary financial decisions, had access to the bank account signing authority, and it is something we believe would be and can be a conflict of interest and create a situation where there could be, a poor decision made for the money that is trusted to the charter school.
So even under the guidance and approval of the full board, you wouldn't believe that a principal should, I mean, I'm just concerned
No,
because
I
you do, like
certainly-
my little school, it's a charter school of the year in 2015 in Georgia, but I totally understand where you're coming from. I just am sharing a concern. I don't know if it's something that Charter Schools Association or department could speak to. I just am worried that when you have a...
This is good. Let Chairman Dixon shine a little light on that as a
Okay.
foreman. So he wants to, all right, Representative Dixon.
You know, even in a school system, the system that I was with was about 13,000 students, and when the state auditors would come in and look at it, they had many more separations of authority related to finances than we could have enough people to do. So you had to overlap some of those things. It's not, I would think, and correct me if you think I'm off from what your goal is. It's not that you take the principle and you say you have no connection to the finances, but you have to have somebody else besides that person who is the authority. So that person may not be making the day-to-day decisions, may not have to sign the check on a daily basis, but he is the one who, or she is the one who ultimately that principal reports to and goes to for overall financial decisions. Because certainly in a small charter school, you're going to run out of people who can fill those roles, but you could have one of the directors. You have the directors even in a small charter. You take one of those directors and they become your financial person, hopefully with some background in it.
Yeah. And I guess, and you're right. I mean, we didn't have a director originally. We do now because we've gotten larger, but originally we really didn't have a director. We had a board chair, a principal. But I guess in this case, and I'm asking also because my board folks will be here next week and I want to be able to explain the bill. Essentially, you would just have like a personnel chair. You'd have someone on the board additionally who is your CFO, who has
Right.
that training. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that consistent with what you were thinking?
It is, yes.
At the chair's discretion, Tony Roberts, who represents the charter, is that, because I know y'all been very involved, would you like to make a comment? I will allow that.
Very much, Chairman and members of the committee. We're in full support of this bill, and I certainly understand the questions that you're asking, Margaret, or Representative Kaiser, excuse me. But as has been said, the CFO could be a volunteer or a board member or a part-time person, just so that the only person that doesn't have their hand on the money is the school leader.
That's right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, number 2, where's the, all right, Representative Stovall?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You have your, there you go. All right.
It's the button on the back, not that button.
The button on the, yeah, there you go. There you go, the one blinking, all right. There you go.
Is it not? Okay.
There, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Mayo, for bringing this bill. And I do kind of piggyback off of what Margaret, Representative Kaiser, was bringing up, because I was a board chair at a very small startup, actually state commission school. And I know that with limited funding that they do receive, which is a whole nother issue that I have with them not being able to receive the same level, then they can be able to afford to hire additional people. But I think one of the recommendations, I don't know if it needs to be placed in the bill or maybe when the schools are going through the training, is being able to itemize out or kind of give them directions and letting them know that what the other options are, like what Tony Roberts brought up. Because just reading it like this, you would kind of think that what the limitation is on those principals or the founders. And I do understand the conflict of interest, because you definitely want to make sure there's separation and there's a check and a balance that's taken
I know
place.
there's a question there somewhere, so.
That was the question I was
Okay,
asking.
isn't
about
that
whether-
true? Isn't that true?
Well, I'm sorry. Is it not true that maybe you could add into the language or making a suggestion about kind of clarifying it out where they will know that there are some other options that they can do, or other individuals or positions that they can have for that?
Right, and thank you, Representative. And I certainly understand the questions brought by you and Representative Kaiser, given the fact that many of these schools are small with limited budgets, and we can talk about funding equity for charter schools on another day, but we simply want to remove the full autonomy when you have one person with their hands on the money,
Amen.
as Tony Roberts stated. But if you look at line 47 in section 2, it states that the state board shall establish the guidelines. So we're going to allow that discretion to rest with the state board, and for the state charter schools, the state charter commission will have some room to be able to write and promulgate those rules. So,
Brevity will be appreciated.
thank you.
Yes, sir. All right. This last question, number 16, Representative Casas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm going to keep beating this dead horse, but
Oh,
on
don't.
Section
Okay.
2, I'm just
No, go ahead.
just having experience with small
Yes,
schools. I'm just afraid that a director that's sitting on the board that may serve as a CFO may be in violation of this code if he's construed as a leader, and I don't think we have a definition of what a leader is, and so.
We're going to have some amendments and we can work on them.
We're going to have some.
Very good.
Oh, you got an amendment?
That's my answer.
Okay, well, good. All right. All right. Any other questions? I don't see any, so at this time, I have number 26. Yes, sir? Chairman Dixon?
Beskin.
Oh, I'm
Thank
sorry.
you, Mr. Chairman. Thank
Okay,
you.
yes.
And Representative Mayo, I have a question about the same section as Representative Stovall's on line 53 and 54, where it says a founder of a charter school shall not serve in simultaneous leadership roles for the charter school. Does that mean the founder can't serve in any leadership role, or the founder can't serve in more than one leadership
We're going to
role?
have an amendment for that one in just a
Okay,
second. So
then-
if you could just hold your question for 1 second on
thank
that
you.
one, we're going to have an amendment for that one, all right? So if I could, do I have a motion this time?
Move do pass.
I have a motion to do pass. Do I have a second? I have a second. All right, this
By
time I have...
substitute.
Ron may have a
Yeah, I'd like to turn to Betsy to offer our amendment, please.
We have some amendments, that's right, that's where I'm headed. All right, the next thing, we have some amendments to be offered. I had to get it on the floor, so the bills have a motion, do pass to substitute LC 336557S substitute. All right, this time we'll accept the amendments. Who has the amendments?
Betsy has the amendments.
All right, so we'll ask this time Legislative Council, if she would, to talk to us about an amendment.
Okay, the first thing is on line 53, there's actually a typo there. It says state charter school, it should say just charter.
Betsy, could I ask you, please, if you come to that mic, some of them, what number is that, David? 15, all right? Thank you.
All right, so the first thing is on line 53. It's a typo. The state needs to be stricken. This is just referring to charter schools. But at the end of that, on line 54, at the end of that section dealing with the founder and what role he or she can serve, the proposal is to add to the end of that, and shall never serve as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school.
Okay.
And then because these provisions are duplicated for the state charter schools, we would also add that same language on at the end of line 99.
Does everyone see
tracks
that?
That same provision.
Everyone see that? I'm going to have that repeated and just say, everyone see that at the end of line 99. All right, that's the amendment. All right, now, questions on the amendment. Number one.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative Easley, all right?
In the event that we put on there that the founder may never be the CFO, or that, what if they already are?
I mean, that would have to either resign. They would be in violation of that unless you wanted to grandfather them in.
Right. And
If
so
this passes, if they are, they would be in violation of the law, and then they'd have to resign or be in violation. If that passes.
So should we add any language that's, should we add any language that says something to the effect of if they currently are, by X number of date, they would have to resign, as opposed to never? Are we somehow putting them in any kind of legal jeopardy? The fact that they've been doing it, and they've been doing a great job, and they've been very honest with the books and all of those things. So just want us to consider that. I only have problems. I don't.
Yeah, I'm going to ask our legislative council to give us an interpretation. They would
be in violation the minute the law went into effect. I mean, you could delay it, but right now this would go into effect July 1. So conceivably, if they knew about it, they could.
What about his suggestion that we maybe put some language they have so many days, or could you say?
That's a policy call. It's totally up to y'all.
I'm coming. All right. Got a question? Number 15, is that where we are?
That's me.
Betsy, all right. We're 17, is that it? All right,
Thank you,
Representative
Mr. Chairman.
Kaiser.
I'm going to have to object to this amendment. I mean, I'm still referred to as a founder of the neighborhood charter school. So I have no fiduciary, nothing to gain from this school's success or failure other than, my community's solvency. But their CFOs are loosely defined. A founder is a very loosely defined word. The neighborhood charter school, when we opened it 15 years ago, was so small that, there were 5 founders. So what would preclude them from being a CFO? I don't, and it still doesn't take care of the issue that we're discussing, that a founder can't serve in other leadership roles simultaneously. I don't understand the reasoning for it. So I don't support that amendment.
Okay. Other discussions on that? Number 18?
Well, that's me. I've got
Maxwell.
some of the same issues. I don't understand why a founder couldn't be on the leadership role, or board of director, or whatever. If they're one of the founders of the school, why could they not serve on some leadership position in that charter school? I don't know why we're being so tight on that. Okay. And I would recommend that if we've got to put this in here about the CFO. I don't know how many charter schools there are or what positions they may be in, but I think if they've got one out there now, they need to be grandfathered in there.
All right. All right, let's see what you can add to it. Representative Dudgeon?
I'll try to get us out of the ditch here, Mr. Chairman. Having served as a reviewer on the state charter commission for several different charter schools, I think the purpose here is that when granting a charter, the idea is you don't have a one-man band and one person's doing playing all the instruments in the band. And maybe the way to do this is to predicate the whole thing on, for new charters granted after the effective date of this code sheet, or for renewals after the effective. In other words, that grandfathers everybody in, because we don't want to go change rules after the after the game has started, so to speak. But I know what the purpose here again is to make sure that there's. I saw this. We had a couple of charters we turned down to the state because it was literally a one-person shop, and there was 10 people at the table. It was very clear that the one guy was going to be everything. So that's the intent of this language. I see heads nodding of my charter school friends in the audience, so hopefully I'm saying it right. So that's the intent. But I agree the language is difficult, but I think we have to at least grandfather in because we really don't want to try to unwind a mess where if this, especially for our locals, have done this. So.
All right, Representative Eskin, what can you add to this?
Just a question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was going to ask Ms. Howerton to...
Is your light? All right, there you go.
Can we hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
I was going to ask Ms. Howerton to read the whole sentence. I wasn't sure if you had struck part of this about the leadership roles, but it sounds like you added the business about the CFO. So since we don't have it in writing, could you please read what the whole sentence would say?
All right, so this would be the sentence that starts on line 53. So it would read, a founder of a charter school shall not serve in simultaneous leadership roles for the charter school and shall never serve as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school.
Yes, they would have a small committee to appoint two or three people to work on it.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, any other questions? We got amendment on the table. We got a lot of discussion. Yes, sir. Representative Mayo, okay, you go ahead.
Question for the members of the committee. What if we change that word founder on line 53 to principal or leader? I think that's the role we're trying to keep away from having full responsibility for managing the money. I don't think it's the founder. That wasn't really the intent.
Okay. Representative Dudgeon.
Mr. Chairman, you and I were chatting a little bit. This is I think everyone is on board with the intent here, but the legal language, I'm afraid, is going to take longer than we can do here sitting at this table. So I'd like to, for the committee, for the chairman, if I need to move to table the issue, that we fix these issues around the leader and have a sub tomorrow, and we'd have to be able to do a meeting tomorrow. That's a suggestion, if the chair would so entertain.
All right, you hear what the recommendation is that we table it, give them a chance to work on, and yeah, and then table it, and then tomorrow, that would mean we'd have to convene a meeting. We'd announce it here today at a certain time. We could do it right there in my office, ante room, whatever, and we'd go. All right, Representative Dixon.
I think this might take care of the problem that he wants, and there's. If you strike the words "a leader,"
tell us what line you're on.
Starting on 52. If you strike the words "a leader" and just say the principal or the equivalent for a charter school, because that's what you're looking for, is that person who is acting as a principal. Or so if you just say the principal or the equivalent for a charter school shall not serve simultaneously as the chief financial officer or its equivalent.
The next sentence, and then add that other sentence about the financial officer. I'd strike the next sentence, a founder down there, and then add that other sentence.
Say what's your number? Say that again, Representative Max. What's your number? 18. All right. Say that again.
I was thinking the same thing that Representative Dudgeon. We strike the next sentence, a founder shall not serve simultaneously, and then add the sentence that Betsy said that they can't serve. Somebody couldn't serve as a chief financial officer.
All right. Betsy, I hate to do this to you. Can you read what was Representative Chairman Dixon said and what Chairman Maxwell just said, all right? Okay, all right, everyone pay attention. We're on line 52, all right? What's your number? 15?
She's still 15.
All right.
Okay, so it would, instead of lines 52 and 54, it would read, the principal or the equivalent for a charter school shall not serve simultaneously as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school. A founder of a charter school shall never serve as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school.
I would eliminate that period.
He would eliminate that.
What was the other sentence you had before? Not a founder, but it was. I thought you had something.
All right.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Founders.
All you're interested in is separating the power of those two positions.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Order. All right. Let's see. 17. What do you have to add to it?
Well, that was I'm sorry. I should have turned my. So we're striking the word founder. Is that correct? We're striking that sentence, second sentence. Is that correct? Okay. If we do that, I'd like to be recognized for a motion.
All right, let's read what it's going to say again. Here's what it's going to say.
Okay, so
All right, starting at 52, here's what the amendment would say.
it would just be one sentence now that would read, the principal or its equivalent, or the equivalent for a charter school shall not serve simultaneously as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school. Period.
That's all it says. Did everyone hear that? Need it read again? All right, we have before us an amendment. Does anyone want to speak? I see some lights blinking. Does anyone want to speak? All right, Baskin.
This may be premature, but that similar paragraph also appears on page
Yeah, that'll
4.
be taken care of in
Okay.
both
Okay.
sections. That's good point. All right, now, we have an amendment, and the amendment reads as follows. 19, do you want to say something?
Well, you might answer my question now. I'll listen to you first. And
all right, the amendment will read as follows that we're going to be voting on, all right? The bill will remain the same except it will be amended on line 52 to say the following. And this is what you're voting on.
The principal or the equivalent for a charter school shall not serve simultaneously as the chief financial officer or its equivalent for the charter school.
Period.
In two places, though.
Two places.
so we
Yep.
struck the and
Online.
never served. We struck
Yeah,
that.
and that's right. All right, everybody understand what we're voting on? All right, do I have a motion from Representative Mayo? That was his amendment. It's been really reworked. Do I have a second to the amendment? I have a second. All right, any discussion for the amendment? No discussion. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed, like sign. All right, the amendment passes. All right, now we are going to be voting on LC 3365557S as amended. I have someone who'd like to speak. Representative Teasley.
Drawing your attention to line 30 now that we've just drawn some murkiness about the word leader. Does this need to be holding the CFO accountable, or is this because it's in the training perspective? Because apparently Representative Dudgeon has an opinion. So,
You want to finish your statement?
I think I'd rather hear what Mr. Dudgeon has to say.
All right, Representative Dudgeon.
My dear friend, Mr. Dudgeon. Yes.
Ma'am, would you come up here and discipline your son, please? Okay. We love him. He's good. He's
To
good.
my great and wonderful friend from Cobb County, I think the point of number 2 for the training there is a little different. The leader's still implementing the budget, and that he's still the one who's figuring out who they're hiring and firing and whether we're going to spend money here and there. The CFO's controlling and doing the books and doing all the auditing, but you still want the leader to be just no different than we, as a school board member, held the superintendent responsible for the budget, even though we had a separate CFO. So I think
Yes, sir.
Do we still want to keep it as leader, or do we need to define principal? That's really
That's
my
his question. Do you have a suggestion, sir? And we can vote on it. Do you have a suggestion?
How about let's keep the language consistent, holding the principal or the equivalent.
All right, holding the principal accountable. So how would you like to amend that? Would you read what you would say? This is another amendment, all right?
It would strike the phrase school leader and replace it with principal, comma, or the equivalent.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, principal, you see the amendment? Everyone see that? On line 30, it would say holding. Read it again. Holding.
It would read holding the principal, comma, or the equivalent accountable for the implementation.
All right. That is his proposed amendment.
And then I think there's also similar language on line 75.
75, is that correct, Betsy? You got that? All right. It'll be done on 75. Everyone here see what we're doing? 75 also.
Is that correct?
Making it consistent. Is that your motion?
That is my motion, yes.
I have a motion. I have a second. I have a discussion. 25. Representative Nix.
Yeah, thank you. Where we're talking about changing their school leaders, now we started off talking about the members of the governing board. So is that exclusively for the chief financial officer, or have we jumped from the members of the board going to training who are all school leaders?
Yeah.
Have we made that jump, or did I get lost in there?
I got it.
Because it says on 14,
Yeah.
the members of the
Yeah.
governing board.
Yeah, I got that.
And then when you follow that down, you've got a colon at the end of 25, and then it starts saying board-developed policies,
Yeah.
holding the school leader accountable.
Yeah, and
Here's your answer, all right?
Representative Nix, I believe that again, the same thing as a public board. The board is being trained about how to hold the principal accountable for the budget. In other words, so yes, the board is receiving training about how you hold that principal accountable. So you're not making the school principal go to this training. The board is still in the training because the section's about board training. You're just saying that part of that training is that you as a board member have to sit down with your school principal and talk to them about how they're doing the budget.
All right, Representative Dixon, you had a good comment, all right?
Yeah, to understand that section, you've got to go back to the beginning of that section where it tells you that what follows is the elements that have to be a part of the training for the board. I would also add, you know, in our environment here in the Capitol, leader has a different connotation. I don't think you'll find anybody in a school or a charter school or a system who has trouble understanding what we mean when we say leader. It's a very different environment.
Sure.
I think that we don't need to get too worried about how we define the leader in that respect.
All right. Representative Glenn?
Question, Mr. Chairman.
No.
If I might add, for Representative Nix, if you refer to lines 23 through 25, recall that the bill we passed in 2012, House Bill 405, which is specific to boards and the governance training that they're required to participate in, this spells out that of the training they're required to participate in, the 9 hours for existing board members and the 15 hours for new board members, 2 to 3 of those hours would be in the area of fiscal management. So it is, that section is specific. So when you mentioned that some part of this bill was specific to boards, that's what it refers to, that the board training for existing and new board members would also require some financial training.
Yeah. And I will say, depending on what you do with this bill, if it were to move forward, we have the Senate to go to. So any comments we have, and we will be looking at this very, very carefully before we take it over there too. So anything we need to correct. All right, we have your amendment on the table, Representative. So if you'll make your motion one more time, we're going to vote on it.
Make the motion that we amend line 30 and line 75 to read holding the principal, comma, or the equivalent.
All right, then the rest will read the same. All right, do I have a second? I have a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Passes. Now, we have LC 336557 substitute as amended twice, as amended, that we have up for a vote. We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? I see none, so we call a vote. All in favor of the bill, please, House Bill 895 as amended, substitute, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. Go to rules. It's yours. Thank you. I thought that would take about 5 minutes, so we're really running well. All right. Doing well. All right. At this time, I'd like to ask Representative David Casas, if you take this long, you've had it, my friend. Now come on forward if you'll present your bill. We're looking at House Bill 864. House Bill 864. This is a substitute, right? I'd like for you to come to the table if you could, where we can all see you. All right. If where you're more comfortable. Got you. All right.
Is this happening? Very well. We on? Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 864, and just like we explained it in the subcommittee, just briefly for you, currently under the Move On When Ready code section, schools or post-secondary schools that can participate in the program right now, whether they are public or non-public, must be SACS accredited in order for students to participate in the dual enrollment. What this bill is doing is expanding that definition of what an eligible post-secondary institution would be, and this has 4 criteria. The first is it must be nonprofit. Secondly, it must offer a bachelor's degree. Third, it must be physically located here in the state of Georgia, so it must be an in-state school. And fourth, it must be accredited by an agency that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education or the Council on Higher Education accreditation. What this will do is it will provide a vehicle here in the state for very good schools that we have in the state, particularly more religious schools that offer undergraduate programs for students that choose to be able to go to these schools and participate in the dual enrollment and Move On When Ready program with these schools that just happen not to be regionally accredited. They're accredited either by a national accreditor or an accrediting agency that's been recognized by the USDOE or CHIA. So that, in essence, is what the bill will do. What I've provided for you also is some data for questions that arose during the subcommittee meeting. And I just wanted to provide that for you in particular, because of course the question was, what kind of fiscal impact will this have? What does this mean as far as the Move On When Ready program, which is such a great program, especially that it's now being projected to grow in the fall by 38%. And so we wanted to take a look at this. So we only have estimates. This is not an official fiscal note, and it hasn't been analyzed deeply. However, the information that has been given to me with the help of a couple of agencies is basically, this is how the formula would work, and this is how they came to an estimate. They take the average of the Move On When Ready dollars that go to private institutions only, which they take that amount and then they multiply it by the number of new institutions that would be eligible under this bill. If we pass this bill, they've given me a list of 10 institutions that would now be included, that would fall under that criteria that we're outlining here in 864. And so they've determined that it would be, on the high end, $5.9 million. Of course, they say that half of eligible privates are actually participating under the current program. So on the low end, it would be $2.9 million. And then we have the list of the 10 schools that would be brought in this program. And you see the list of 10 schools there. However, if you look at the next page, with that information, I dug a little bit more. And we'll find out that from those 10 schools, there's actually only 4 that will be eligible. And I'll explain that chart for you. If you see Beulah Heights University would certainly be one that would be included. They are accredited by TRACS, and they have a current undergraduate enrollment of about 286 students. They offer a BA in Business Administration, a BA in Leadership Studies, and a BA in Religious Studies. The next one would be Carver College, who also does a BA in Business Administration and a BA in Psychology. They're accredited by ABHE, another recognized agency. They have about 88 undergraduate students. The next one would be Georgia Christian University. And the last one would be Luther Rice College and Seminary. These would be the 4 institutions that would come in. Why aren't the others included? Well, Candler School of Theology is handled by Emory University. They're currently under SACS, so they currently are allowed dual enrollment. Columbia Theological Seminary does not offer bachelor's degrees, so they would not fall under this bill. Covenant College offers various BAs and BSs, but they're already accredited by SACS, so you can already dual enroll. Guido, I'm not sure where Guido is, but and I'm not sure what they teach at Guido. I'm sure it's a bouncer school. But Guido Bible Institute offers no bachelor's degrees. They're only an applicant. They're not even accredited yet. So they would not be included under this bill. And Interdenominational Theological Center offers no bachelor's degrees, but they are accredited by SACS already. If you look at the next list, turn the page, that's currently the list of private institutions today that are permitted to participate in Move On When Ready. The only reason is because they're SACS accredited. And so what I'm asking in this bill is that families that wish to send their students to these other institutions but can't simply because they're not regionally accredited, will now be able to do so under 864. That, in a nutshell, is
Mr. Chairman, I think it's safe to say now, this is for, listen very carefully, this is not for the Hope Scholarship. It's not for anything but the new Move On When Ready. And that simply means that's the law we passed in Bill 2 and all these other bills. They could dual enrollment, joint enrollment, and one other thing we need to realize, some of these schools, the credit will not transfer to others, and you may want to comment on that, Mr. Chairman.
I certainly can. Right now, it's just higher ed practice in the United States. Even if you are a SACS accredited school, a school is not required to accept your credits. Transfer credits is on a school by school basis unless there's articulation agreements already existing. But schools decide whether they want to accept your credits or not.
Okay. Now I have a couple of questions. So 22, that's Chairman Dixon.
What is the attitude of the State Department of Education on this?
The only ones I've had conversations with is the Student Finance Commission, and they're neutral on this.
I met with Student Finance. They're neutral on this.
State Department of Education.
State Department, I haven't talked with them about it, so I'll ask, would you comment?
Refer to the Georgia Student Finance Commission.
That's what I was trying to say. Student Finance, I will say the Student Finance Commission has met with us, talked with me. We met last Friday, I think it was. Matter of fact, if you remember, this was in a subcommittee of, whose subcommittee was this in? Yours? It was in Bowers. And we were asked, they asked for it to be moved to the full committee, but the Student Finance Committee asked that we hold the bill, which I held the bill, so they had a chance to analyze it and do it, which I did. Met with them, they handed us the data. We got it Friday and again today and yesterday, so they have, and they're neutral. Said today they're neutral on the on it. No comment. They've given us all the data we wanted. We held it for them. They did the calculations, and so you see the calculations Representative Cass has given you, all right? All right, so we have questions everywhere. All right, we're going to start in the order they were. Number 12, Representative Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Costa, question I asked you at the subcommittee meeting, which one of these four are you affiliated with?
I am with Luther Rice College and Seminary.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Number 26, Representative Beskin.
Representative Cassis?
Yes.
Do you think it might create a likelihood of confusion for families who have their students enroll in a Move On When Ready program, which implies that a student can move on to college? And then if you look at the section of the bill that we're talking about here, under Move On When Ready, it is always defined eligible post-secondary institutions by reference to the code provision in 20-3-519 under Hope Scholarship. Correct. And there are the eligible institutions listed there under Part 7, but now you would propose to amend this under Move On When Ready, saying eligible post-secondary institution means all those over there into the Hope Scholarship section where you could move on to college by getting credit for the Hope program, plus this new type of post-secondary institution, which are not SACS accredited, so you could take a course at one of these, but if I'm correct, that credit would not count towards Hope eligibility. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the idea is certainly the parent, as they're making that decision, would have to, I guess, would have to know even when they are participating in schools that are already listed as private and they are already SACS accredited too. I mean, there are courses in there just by the fact of being a private institution that will be under the scrutiny of any university or even the Hope Scholarship Program. So the idea of the Move On When Ready code, the way that it's written right now, it's not so much as to whether they are moving towards the Hope Scholarship, which I think that we've made a very clear definition as to separating the two programs. But here we're just talking straight college credit. for them to be able to transfer those credits and be able to begin their college career, but with those credits in mind. Yes, granted. If they go to an institution that is not SACS accredited, certainly those credits would come under scrutiny from a college should they decide that they want to go to a public institution. But most of the students, at least what it is assumed, is most of the students that would participate in these schools in particular is because they're looking towards enrolling in a school of this type in order to pursue a bachelor's degree in religious studies.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe I could say it this way, Mr. Chairman. Those that are looking into going into business administration or going into any type of liberal arts program in any other institution is not going to go to a religious school in order to do their dual enrollment.
Okay, all right. 17, that's Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Casas, can you tell us what TRACS and ABHE is?
Certainly. TRACS is the Transnational Association of Christian Colleges and Seminaries. They are a national accreditor. ABHE is the Association of Biblical Higher Education. There's also a third one, which is ATS. You see it there. That is the Association of Theological Schools. Those are the three biggest national accreditors that are non-regional.
So I guess my concern is I feel like we're doing this backwards. It feels like if these, in particular, these four want to have students participate in dual enrollment, they should be applying for SACS accreditation rather than the other way around. I feel like we're kind of skirting a standard here that...
Indeed, that would be, I guess that would be the elephant in the room. The idea is that these institutions have chosen not to pursue SACS for one reason or another, particularly in what includes what regional accreditation means for many of these institutions. And so if there is an institution, for example, like Emory, which has a national accreditor for their divinity school, but then they have SACS for their liberal arts and their medical programs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What they're doing in that case is if they want to pursue a program or want to offer a program that is outside of religious studies, then you go for a regional accreditor. But some of these schools that are offering undergraduate programs that are fully recognized, the state of Georgia has authorized them. They have access to Title IV funds from the United States Department of Education in order to offer student loans and student aid, but have chosen not to go regional simply because their programs don't require that. They are religious in nature.
Any other questions? I see no other questions. The lights are off. So do I have a motion on this piece of legislation? We're looking now, remember, at House Bill 864, substitute LC 336499S. Do I have a motion? I have number 20.
A motion do pass.
Have a motion do pass.
864, LT 336499S.
Do I have a second? I have a second. All right. Any more discussion? All right. This time, all in favor of passing House Bill 864, substitute LC 336499S, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Louder. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed by the like sign? No. Chair's undecided. All in favor of the piece of legislation. Sheena, if you would, you and Courtney, please indicate by raising your hand. This is in favor. This is do pass.
7.
How many? 7. We have 7 yeses. All opposed, like sign. Everybody must vote. You do realize that. You must vote. Why don't you, all right, once again, I see they're saying 8, 7. If you're in, now you got to, everybody must vote. If you in favor of the bill, please raise your hand. In favor, yes. You must vote. 7. Everybody against the bill. You get your hands up there. We can see them. All right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
8.
That's 8.
It's 8 to 7. The bill is defeated. All right, let's move to the next bill. Thank you. All right, at this time we will ask Representative Dixon if he would please come forward and present to us House Bill 1061.
Wait a minute.
Oh, wait
Point of order.
a minute. Point of order.
When you should revote.
Wait a minute.
He's a member of the
He's a member of the committee. I have a point of order, which is right. The presenter is a member of this committee, and he does have a right to vote. All right? All in favor? You have a right to vote, my friend. Yes, sir. You want to say anything before we go?
I do, Mr. Chairman. Since this is the will of the committee and it's split like that, I want to have more conversations. I prefer to withdraw the bill,
All right.
and I'm going to convince these members.
You do what?
I'm going to convince them.
Oh, that sounds good. So I reserve the right to call a meeting of this committee tomorrow or Friday, and to if you would like. Yes, sir. So all right, hold it. We got a recommendation. Oh, we can. I think we got to have. All right, go ahead.
I would make this recommendation to you. I could probably vote for the bill if it had a requirement that students be given information relative to the applicability of the coursework.
And I'm totally in favor of that. If we'd like to make that amendment, we can see.
You want to just make that statement? Make that motion. You just say that recommendation.
I just said it.
All right. He making a recommendation. What Representative? Say it where I can hear it. I want to hear it. Say it again.
Students, it would be required that students be given information as to the transferability of the coursework at these institutions.
Now, I'm not going to take a lot of discussion on this because what we've done, the author has withdrawn the bill. The author has said he wants to have it. I'm giving, since we're so close to the 30th day, tomorrow afternoon, I'll call, if we need to, call another committee. I'll give a couple of you a chance. If you feel like you've got to say something, raise your hand. All right, anybody else? All right, Representative Glanton?
Just a point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm just wondering, because we did actually take a vote on this bill, should we either have reconsidered and move to reconsider and then come back?
I was going to say, that's what I was getting ready to say.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was just trying to get ahead of you.
I want you to make that motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we reconsider this bill.
All right, I have a motion to reconsider. I have a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, reconsider. At the proper time, you have your chance to.
Do it now and get done with it.
Do it now? Okay, let's go.
Okay. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to present it again and then entertain that amendment for
All right.
notification.
Just go ahead and take the amendment.
Go ahead and just do it.
It's taken.
All right. Betsy, did you write that amendment down, I hope?
Who's providing the notice?
Who's providing the notice? The schools. The schools that receive the students.
Of the university.
The university, right.
So if they get in, then they have to.
So if I enter in at Luther Rice has to inform me that my credits will probably not be transferable to schools that are not in their jurisdiction, or however you want to say it.
You can add the words as a part of the application process.
Okay.
There you go.
That's good.
A really good word.
That's a really good one. What's that, Betsy? Probably. Yeah, you don't have to say the word. You can say, they may, though. You don't know. I mean, you can't say they won't be. They may be. Yeah.
The status of their transferability.
Betsy, since you're on legal counsel and you are really on top of it, would you move to the microphone and tell us exactly what it says? All right?
She didn't know yet.
Oh, yes. Betsy's ready. I know she. All right, everyone, please give us attention. This is very. All right.
This is a little from the hip, but so I think if we add at the end of line 15, provided, however, that any such nonprofit institution which accepts a student under the program provides notice to the student that the coursework may not be transferable or something. I can.
As a part of the application.
As part of the application process. All right.
Does the author accept that? Okay. Everyone hear that? I have Chairman Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I still have a problem because we're going to allow the school to use an accrediting agent that we don't know about, yet we know stringent. We don't know how stringent their crediting is. Yet those of us that have been in education know exactly how stringent SACS is. And these other schools that were listed in the paper are SACS accredited. If we're going to do this and we're going to be spending state dollars, I think they ought to have to go along with SACS accreditation.
In the information that I provided for you, I put at the very end what CHIA's guidelines are, and also United States Department of Education. Please understand that any accrediting agency that's recognized by the stringent guidelines of the Council on Higher Education and the United States Department of Education allows any school that's accredited by these agencies to accept federal dollars. Students can get Pell Grant, students can get student financial aid, students can transfer into any other school because their degrees are valid, but yet families can't choose to send their kids there to dual enroll.
Okay. All right. Comment? Okay. You've heard the comments? All right. At this time, we have before us House Bill, once again, well, you know that, we have the House Bill 864, an amendment, an additional amendment to the House Bill. And if Betsy is ready, I'll have it read one more time, and where it's going, we'll vote on that amendment, then we'll vote on the bill. All right, Betsy? Because we're reconsidering it. All right?
All right. Yeah, I've lengthened it a little bit. So now adding to the end of line 15, it would say, provided, however, that any such nonprofit institution that holds institutional accreditation by an accrediting agency that is recognized by CHIA or the USDOE shall provide notice as part of the application process to any student who applies to such institution pursuant to the Move On When Ready program that the coursework may not be transferable.
All right. Did you hear them? Everyone understand the amendment? Do I have a motion? I have a motion. I have someone. I had a second. I have a second. Number 17 would like to make a comment. Representative Glenn.
I have a question, actually.
All right. Representative Kaiser.
So I just want to be clear. We've got 4 schools we're talking about at this moment. As we move forward a year from now, 2 years from now, as other schools come online that are accredited by agencies other than SACS, they could conceivably be considered for dual enrollment as well. Correct. Is that correct?
If they meet the same requirements these schools do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so
is that correct?
Which those requirements are nonprofit, located in Georgia, offer a bachelor's degree, and are accredited by a recognized accrediting agency. But yes, they may conceivably be part of the program.
All right. Everybody have their questions answered? It's up. All right. The question before you now, this amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Any more discussion of the amendment? All right. All in favor of the amendment, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, like sign. The amendment passes. Now, we have before us, it was for reconsideration, so we're going to take a vote again on House Bill so that everybody knows what we're doing now. House Bill is going to be voted on. 864 LC 336499, substitute as amended with 2 amendments. All right, all in favor, please indicate by raising your hand. All in favor. Those who want to vote yes, I encourage anybody who wants to vote yes.
Including the author.
Including the author. I wasn't going to say that. I thought maybe catch my... How many? How many? 11, all against. All right, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to. All right, that's good, 11. All right, the bill passes. All right.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, members of the committee.
Anybody? All right. Now, if Representative Chairman Dixon, if you would please go down and present your... Now, I encourage everyone, I want to say to you now, I want to encourage everyone, even those you leave in just a second, please, if you're late, just a second. Please read this bill very carefully, where you know my intention. We're having hearing only today. The counterpart from the Senate will be coming across probably this week or next week. I plan to hold a 2 to 3 hour hearing on it. So be sure you read that bill also, the Senate version and this one. Okay, at this time I'd like to ask Chairman Dixon, if he would please come to the front. All right.
That first stuff was going to take 15 minutes.
I did tell him that. You want to sit there? You want? Yes, I can put that one on anyone you want. All right. You're just hiding in the dark over there. I know what you.
I was tired of sitting.
Okay.
But I've got 2 hours of testimony here.
You do 2 hours. Amen, Howard.
Okay, we are here to talk about House Bill 1061, which deals with annual performance evaluations for teachers of record, assistant principals, and principals. I want to start by saying something about evaluation, because it's really what guides my thinking when I think about it. And when I start to think about evaluation, I go back in my mind to when I was a principal, when I was a teacher, and actually when I began teaching, and had to deal with discipline. And I had to make a decision, what does discipline mean to me? Is it punishment, or is it the correct behavior? And that determined how I was going to deal with discipline. Well, when I talk about and think about evaluation, I have the same thing that I have to make a decision. What is my purpose for teacher evaluation or principal evaluation? Is it simply to get rid of somebody who's not doing the job I think they ought to do? Or is it to help improve instruction and leadership? I'm one who falls down on the side of, my primary purpose is to improve instruction and improve leadership. That guides how I look at evaluation, and it shows up, I think, in the way we have outlined this. If you want to look at the bill, the first changes that you see from actual language, current language, begin on line 15, where we talk about the amount of attendance or the percentage of attendance that a student must have to be a part of a teacher's evaluation. Current law would have it at 65%. This bill would increase that number to 90%. If we're going to hold the teacher accountable for what a student has done, they need to have been present or a part of that class for more than just a little over half of the year. And so we're proposing changing that to 90%. If you read on down, we talk about evaluations, the observations. For teachers of record, the annual evaluation shall be based on 50% classroom observations. That's current. Current law says that. And we go on 30% student growth. That's the testing component, and we've changed that from 50% in current law. And then, because everything has to add up to 100%, we add 20% professional growth. And when I've talked with folks, they want to know what do we mean by professional growth there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. For principals, assistant principals, and principals, the annual evaluation shall be based on 30% school observation, that's current law, 40% student growth, that's as opposed to 70% in current law, and then added for them, 30% professional growth. Professional growth can mean a lot of things. Obviously, if you identify in your observations of a teacher that there's a weakness in this area, or we think you can do better if you try a different approach, how they go about doing that is a part of your professional growth. We offer an option beginning on line 22, professional growth for teachers of record with a rating level of exemplary, to the earlier part, professional growth for them can include becoming a mentor teacher for other teachers. That, in other words, part of their professional growth is using their growth that they already have to help lead other teachers. For teachers who aren't exemplary, part of their professional growth could be taking advantage of a mentor teacher who is active in their particular building and utilizing that as a part of their own professional growth that's not been mandated by the principal. Teachers of record, there's a change that has to be made in this on line 29. The date needs to be changed from 2014-2015 school year. We've kind of gone past that. And then on line 36, we changed that 50% there back to 30%. Again, dealing with the test data, testing part of it. See the same thing down on line 44, changing the 50% to 30%. Something that was very important to me based on the time that I spent as a principal and later as a superintendent, I knew that every teacher didn't need the same amount of observations. You had an outstanding teacher that you had seen performing for years. It wasn't necessary to spend 6 formal observations in their classroom. You were going to see them. As a leader in a school, you're walking the halls constantly. And when you're walking the halls, you're walking by classrooms, you're looking in. You may step in there for just a minute or two. If you're doing your job as a leader in a school, you know what's happening in that classroom. So what we have done is say that for a teacher who is performing exemplary or proficient, that 3 is an acceptable number. I personally would say probably for some of those teachers, 1 formal observation is probably sufficient. But we're talking about 3, and it's kind of left up in the language to a little bit of the school can make their own decisions about the exact number. I would tell you also, I read a report from Andy Baxter, who is works for the Southern Regional Education Board, whose specific area of expertise is school evaluation. He had a display on the internet yesterday that talked about observations are only as valuable as the conversation that takes place after the observation is over. In other words, if once you've been in a classroom and watched the teacher perform, if we don't have a time where they sit down and talk about what they saw, how they think it could go better, what recommendations they can make for ways to improve. If you don't do those things, the observation is worthless. All it is the part of evaluation that I say is not as important to me. If you're just looking for some place to ding somebody, you don't worry about the conversation. So I think that we don't have it in here, but I would say that we need to get to the point where that's a key part of their evaluation is how they handle that post-observation communication with teachers. We have the same kind of information for the principal and leadership evaluations. I will tell you again, from my personal bias, we need to concentrate on the leadership evaluations. If we do a good job with that, we'll take care of a lot of the other problems that we have. I know there's some others in this room who have been local school principals or system level personnel, just as I have. And I think part of the reason we're in the mess we are today is we didn't do as good a job as we should have in teacher evaluation. Not the getting rid of, but the helping teachers to improve and be the best that they can be. We've got a lot of excellent teachers out there. We just need to help them be who's it, the Army that says be the best you can be? All you can be. Well, you know. What is it, the Marines that want to be the best? Teachers want to be the best that they can be. Overwhelming majority of the teachers that I ever worked with, they wanted to do the best job they could do. We need to do our part to help them be there. I'm be willing to. It's a simple bill. We intentionally focused just on evaluations because I think that is the precursor to getting everything else right.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have several questions, so let's start off. Number 16, Representative Casas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Be kind to me. I was nice to you.
I'm always kind to you. Always. We have nothing but love.
Will your evaluation transfer?
Yeah. It's actually a couple of questions on a couple of the sections, but being on 12 years on the receiving end of an evaluation, I'm just curious if you had any discussion or any consideration for those percentages. Is that too hard line when you're saying, 50% here, 30% here, 20% here, where maybe for the evaluator, knowing these are the areas I need to evaluate and let them provide their best judgment?
Part of it was dealing with reality. The climate in not just in Georgia, but in most of the United States right now is accountability. We've got to have test scores be a part of it. So we felt it had to be there. So we put a number in. Is there, in my opinion, some kind of logic that says 30% is the magic number? It's the magic number because it's what's in there. I could have lived with 20%, 10%. To me, the test data, test data is important. I mean, we need to look at test data. I don't have any qualm about that. But that's the least important thing to me because that's the thing that you're really looking at. And if you're more on the mode of this teacher's really not doing what they're supposed to get, they're just not getting the job done, period. Yeah. Test data is going to show up there.
Right.
I'm more concerned with how can we improve the teacher from what I've seen, how they're teaching in the classroom.
Okay. Well, my second question, if I may, Mr. Chairman, I know you've worked in your focus is to work on these evaluations, and I guess I'm dealing with reality also that in lines 53 through 58 where you're requiring the number of observations, I'm just thinking back to how hectic the schedule is for an administrator who knows that they've got 4 or 5 teachers they got to evaluate, and each of them are 3 or 6 times a year. That of course, we were doing a worse job back then than we are now, definitely. But I would remember getting emails and saying, "I've got to do your evaluation next week because the deadline is Friday." It's that kind of thing that I'm wondering if we're imposing too much on already full plate.
I think part of it is that we're not saying in this how you're going to do that evaluation. 12 years doesn't take you back far enough for when we went through statewide an evaluation change in the, I guess it was the late 70s, early 80s. And we had a set number of these major observations we had to do with long lists of things we had to mark things off. And it fell apart, in my opinion, primarily because the paperwork and time burden became just unbearable. This says 3 observations, but it doesn't say that you've got to be in that classroom for 45 minutes 3 separate times. I think it leaves it up that you must observe that teacher. Now, as an administrator, I think you've got to make that decision. This teacher, I'm concerned. I think we can do a better job here. I'm going to spend more time in this room and see if I can figure out some ways that we can help her or him. I'm going to spend an extraordinary amount of time over here in this coach's classroom.
And what we're not realizing is right now in the rule, you're doing 6 observations required.
Right.
And you're cutting it down to 3 because we're saying, why go 6 when 3 may work? We got to realize the rule right now is making them do 6 now. All right. Number 2, and then we're coming over here. Number 2, that's Representative Stovall. Then I have 19, 20, and 27, 16.
All right, thank you, Chairman Dixon. The only question I have is where in the evaluation do parents and students play a part in it?
Parents and students?
Mm-hmm, in the evaluation of the effectiveness of our educators. And when I say students, I'm more so thinking of middle and high school students. I kind of read through the language of it. I didn't see anything of what I know they do the school climate survey now, but I think in some instances, I think we need to be able to even take into consideration, because there are some teachers that I feel that taught my kids that, and I didn't get a chance to look at the evaluation because of the personnel record, but I would like to have had some kind of say-so into, at least get my input into whether I think that teacher did an effective job with educating my child, and even to the point of contacting me as a parent and being in constant and making sure that I'm aware of what's going on with my children as well. So I just wanted to ask as far as that.
I think my comment to that would be, as an administrator, first of all, parents never had any problem coming and tell me what they thought of their child's teacher. And typically, there was not universal agreement. I mean, it was rare that you had 30 parents come in and say, we just don't like the way this person teaches. There was always, typically, there was that rare instance where that would occur. I would not, and didn't, put a formal place for parents' input. But that does not preclude parents from communicating. I think parents have a right to communicate with the administration of the school.
Man, I
thought you were going to ask me about sunset for it. Huh?
Yeah.
Ask the question. Representative, ask the question. Don't make a comment. Just ask the question. Yeah.
No, that's what I was asking about, him placing that in there about the parents and the students.
Okay. Next, we have number 27, that Representative Belden. Are you on?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really appreciate this bill, and I appreciate your leadership in giving it to us. I've talked to a lot of my teachers back home, and in general, the morale is very low because of the onerous testing requirements and the fact that they're required to their evaluation be 50%. So my question is, don't you think that lowering it to 30% is going to have less reliance on standardized testing and create more creativity in the classroom?
I would hope so. Of course, testing is a separate issue, and while we did not approach it in this bill, I think it's something that needs to be. We need to come to some grips with how much testing we do, what type of testing we do, and I think we can help with teacher morale when we do that. But we will not do away with testing. Testing is a part of education.
Okay. Representative Dudgeon?
Just real quick, I will note one thing in the question, Mr. Chairman. It was noted by the Governance of Student Achievement, the reason that testing doesn't need to go away is because when they just looked at the evaluations, you had a curve that was still probably skewed a little bit too high towards everyone getting the higher grades. So I think there is a place for the testing. When about it coming? My question, though, was more of an intent. I agree with you on the 90% attendance. Is that for someone who would transfer in, or literally like if some kid missed like 20 days because they were out sick, or it was a chronically absent kid, would it cover that, or is your intention just somebody who would like transfer in halfway through the school year?
I think that's something we can have further discussion about.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, it has to apply to somebody who's transferring in.
Absolutely.
We have schools throughout our state that the transiency rate is, I think most people would be shocked if they knew what the transiency rate was in a lot of our schools. 50% of the kids are in and out or greater.
I have any more questions this time? If you would just want to take a seat, I'm going to have our people in the audience to comment. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each member. Now, remember, this is preliminary hearing. We're having a major hearing probably next week or the week next week when the Senate bill comes forward, 364. That does have a testing component in it. It has this component in it also. But at this time, I'm going to ask the people that are presenting, come forward, give us your stand, and remember, I'm going to limit you very, very, very to a very short time. And remember, we appreciate your brevity. So this time, Georgia Association of Educators, Dr. Sid Chapman, if you'd come forward. Yeah, if you'd come over to the microphone. Just use the podium. That'd be good.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming over to GAE Day and the proclamation, and
very nice.
The rest of you that made it over, and thank you, Mr. Dixon.
You had great attendance that day. I really appreciate it.
Over 260.
I know, had a good crowd.
A very good day for us, and thank you, Representative Dixon, for this bill. GA, I'll just make it short. We support it, and we like what you're doing. We support the Department of Education's efforts to improve evaluations. Part of the byproduct of all this testing has been undue stress on students, family life, and educators, and everyone that's involved. GA is pleased by the evaluation or the introduction of bills that related to reducing testing and improving the evaluation system of teachers. We feel that it's been way too punitive, the testing part, and so and we like the idea of 90%. There are a lot of transient students. Why should you be totally responsible for some child that you've only seen a couple of days? So why should that have anything to do with your evaluation? I'm going to keep it short because that's what you asked me to do. I had a lot of stuff here, and I'll come back and add a lot of things, but we do appreciate Mr. Dixon's efforts here. And once again, we would like to see somewhere someone put in an appeal for a grievance procedure of an evaluation, because right now, and it never has been any way that a teacher can appeal their evaluation. So
yeah, I heard someone just whisper to me, we're talking about two leaks and teaks. The word you hear, leaks, leader evaluation, teaks, teacher evaluation. That's what we're talking about in this. Somebody just said, is that what that's what we're talking about, the leaks and teaks here, all right?
Yes, sir.
No, I'm talking about the leaks, but who do you appeal? You're concerned about that, but that's what you're talking about, the appeal for leaks and teaks.
Right. Once you're evaluated,
yeah.
Of course, the testing is a piece of it.
Yeah, where do you go to that? That's what you're
right.
talking about.
We have there. You don't. You can only grieve the process if the process is violated the way it is right now. And some of these bills, the ones coming from the Senate, some coming from the House, we would just like to see somewhere that it would be included, maybe even a new bill, that there could be a grievance process for a teacher to appeal the evaluation. Just like my right honorable friend said, that I'm feeling like I'm in British Parliament, that you could know that there are many teachers that only need like one evaluation, but you may have a lot of parents who may not like them, and then a lot of things start happening, and then that human emotion gets in it, and then they may not receive a proper evaluation or something that's just not fair. So right now there's nothing you can say about it, so I'm going to sign it or not sign it.
All right, Dr. Chapman, we have a question. Representative Glanton.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Just out of curiosity, what suggestion would you have for an appeal entity? Who would that be? What would it look like?
Well, in my mind, and I think some of the things that we've talked about along the way, that there would be some kind of panel, maybe
an advisory board or something
right,
of that nature,
peers,
at the state level or local.
I would say even within your school or from the district.
All right. I'm going to have to, all right, get your question. All right, we have several more presenters, so thank you so much.
Okay.
I was going to keep them to a minute. That was a little over a minute, but I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for
You did
allowing-
good job.
thank
all
you
right.
for allowing.
All right, Jane Howe with Tragic. Jane? And please tell everyone what Tragic stands for. I know, but I want to be sure everybody knows.
Good afternoon. Tragic stands for Teachers Rally to Advocate for Georgia Insurance Choices. We have expanded our vision to include beyond the insurance and benefits. We now are looking at all aspects of public education as advocacy and advocating for children in the state. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Representative Dixon and Representative Coleman, and the other sponsors of this bill for your acknowledgement in tying 50% of a teacher's and 70% of an administrator's evaluation to test scores places far too much emphasis on bubble test. When that much emphasis is placed on one particular item, all activities within the building are driven by this criteria. For a student's test score to be any kind of reflection on a teacher's ability to teach, that student must be present in the classroom, and we support your choice of 90% student attendance for this bill. Teachers surveyed by the Governor's Educational Reform Commission and the Department of Education have overwhelmingly spoken out against the amount of testing and the use of those tests and surveys in evaluations. Georgia tests our children at 3 times the federal requirement, and the number of instructional days lost to testing, surveying, and preparing the test is staggering. While House Bill 1061 would limit the percentage of test scores used in evaluations, it does not reduce or limit the number of tests given to our children, nor does it offer any protection for instructional time, and these are concerns that we have. Also, there are teachers in the state who do not have standardized tests for their classes, and therefore the tests used to base their evaluations on, as well as the student performance, are neither valid, reliable, nor standard. Senate Bill 364 was just passed out of the Senate Education and Youth Committee on Friday. It appears to be a more comprehensive bill to reform testing and evaluation. Senate Bill 364 would reduce the number of required tests by 1/3, require any test used in evaluations to be valid, standard, and reliable, and establish a tiered observation system that would allow administrators to focus their observations on new and developing teachers. Most importantly, Senate Bill 364 would shift much of the decision-making in testing and evaluations back to the district level, allowing our local districts to choose the tools they need to evaluate student progress and teacher effectiveness. We appreciate so much your acknowledgement of the need to reform testing and evaluation, but the 2 main improvements offered by House Bill 1061, lowering percentages in testing and teacher and administrator evaluations and setting a higher minimum attendance requirement, are also found in the Senate counterpart. We respectfully ask that you set aside House Bill 1061 and instead offer to carry Senate Bill 364 to the House once it has passed the Senate.
Thank you so much. All right. At this time, we'd like to introduce from Page, Professional Association of Georgia Educators, Margaret Ciccarella.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't belabor the point because Jane eloquently just laid them out for you, but I'd just like to dovetail those comments to say that Georgia is an outlier regarding the emphasis of testing in our educator evaluation process. We're one of only a dozen states that weight testing so highly in an educator's evaluation at 50% currently for teachers and 70% for leaders. The passage at the federal level of the Every Student Succeeds Act now allows us to further reform our evaluation system. I think it says a lot that the sponsor of the recent reforms is a signer on this bill. An acknowledgement that we have gone too far with the emphasis of testing and evaluation, and that we must further refine our evaluation system to ensure that we keep the best educators serving our students and continue to attract the best educators. I think that the argument over testing and educator and parent and student concern over the overemphasis of testing is driving many of the hard conversations that we've been having about policy under the Gold Dome, about teacher compensation, teacher evaluation, and how we should continue to reform public education. So I really appreciate the acknowledgement in this bill. Really appreciate you for bringing it and appreciate the hearing here today. I do hope that we will put our combined efforts behind Senate Bill 364, which is a more comprehensive bill. There are some better things, in fact, about this bill, and like the enhanced attendance requirement. That might be something that you would consider adding to 364. I think it would make a big difference to that bill as well. But again, we sincerely hope, on behalf of 90,000 educators and the students they serve, that you will pass testing and evaluation reform this year. It is the right time for students and educators, and we're excited to work with you at this moment to make sure that we do the right thing for our schools in the state.
Thank you. Now we have Metro Atlantans for Public Schools. Ms. Cook? All right, yes.
Thank you. And I want to say you don't know how good it feels for me to be here to speak for something that might actually pass. That has not been a common experience for me. I feel like we really are working together, and that makes a difference. I'm here from Metro Atlanta for Public Schools. It's a group of teachers with whom I've met sometimes monthly for about 5 years. So I've been learning a lot from them and their concerns about they kept saying, it's not like it used to be when you were teaching high school. They're not opposed to being evaluated or to administering tests that help them assess the needs and progress of their students. But they worried about the emphasis on testing scores and TEKS from its very beginning, or even before it began. One teacher saw 5 of her colleagues die early from stress-related diseases, stimulated by the excessive testing and the kind of scripted teaching that her particular school was imposing. I have not been a high school teacher for many decades, but I have strong memories of how exciting it could be to guide the learning of young students. I know what it means to love to be in the classroom, and I found it very sad that fewer and fewer teachers have been able to have that experience in Georgia. If this bill can become the start of more coordination with educators and parents, legislators, everyone, about what can actually work, I believe the positive results will be far greater than you might imagine. Thank you for listening to the wisdom of committed educators. And I want to add that I think somebody said in speaking about 364, the idea of having, maybe not in the bill, but through the DOE, the school climate be one of the issues by which you evaluate the leaders. Because I think we're developing better ways to evaluate that, and the leaders should be held responsible for that. Thank you.
All right, next we have GSSA. That's John. John? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the opportunity to come make a very brief comment. And I want to say I appreciate Chairman Dixon bringing the bill. GSSA overall supports the moving the ball down in the right direction, I think. As far as being good, better, and best, it's a good bill. And there may be another bill that may be better, and maybe we can make it a best bill if we combine the two. So I think we have that opportunity. And again, I appreciate everybody's comments, as well as the opportunity to actually, again, come before you and be for something and not be against something. So thank you for the time.
Very good. All right. Next we have Students First, Michael O'Sullivan. Michael?
I appreciate you having the discussion today, and I think the one thing that I would like to weigh upon you is that as you consider changes to Georgia's teacher evaluation system, we just urge you to act cautiously. While certain adjustments may need to be made, we feel that it's important that there is a balance that's maintained between objective measurements and regular observations in order to collect information that can be used to help teachers succeed and students learn. Specifically as it relates to House Bill 1061, we certainly understand the desire to provide districts with more flexibility in the number of evaluations or number of observations that a teacher might have. However, we maintain that a minimum number of observations should be performed. Feedback is a critical component to professional development and is something that teachers have routinely told us is something that they desire. Our organization believes that feedback received through an effective teacher evaluation system can be both used to enhance the efforts of many of our greatest teachers throughout the state, as well as to provide guidance to those who are struggling. We look forward to working with you as this bill and this issue continues in order to find a meaningful solution that provides an honest view of what is happening in the classroom and in a way that meets the needs of both educators and the purpose of education meets the needs of the students as well.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And that brings our comments to a close. And but I'm going to let Randy sum it up. One thing I do want to say before anybody else leaves, I am going to request that we had another bill that I want to consider today, House Bill 371 from Representative Glenn here. We're going to request that be, excuse me, 814, I'm sorry, I had the wrong. Yeah, 814, House Bill 814 about the military identifier, that we're going to request that be placed on the Title 20 piece of legislation. We're moving into the Senate. So we'll be where you know where that is. That was very important to us. So I want to do that. And at this time, Representative Nix would like to make us like to sum up what we've said. All right. And then I'll give the author of the bill the closing minute. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say, as the original author of the bill, I want to thank Chairman Dixon for his work on this. I heard some people talk about we want to refine the process. I think maybe we want to tweak the process. We don't want to throw it out. Let's use a scalpel and not a meat cleaver on it.
Yes.
But I think the message I would like to put out there is to the educators that we have heard you. Anytime you try to put a process in place, and I think from a teacher's standpoint, anybody else, you know you'd rather tighten it a little too tight and be able to back off than to get it where you've got to tighten it down again. And I think maybe that's where we are. We've tightened a little too tight. We need to back off a little bit, and then give a chance for that to work. But mainly, I wanted to thank Chairman Dixon. We talked about this. We've got a couple of other things we've talked about. We've talked about a grievance process, whether or not there's a possibility to get something like that in there. But we're discussing some other things too. And I just want to thank him and thank everybody who came to discuss the bill. And I think this is a great move forward for us. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You know, I think I would be remiss in not saying, what, 5 years ago you started this, Representative Nix, when you met down at Kia, and we talked about doing with the leaks and the teaks and all the work you've done. And I do want to commend you what you've done. I know you've spent not just a few hours, hundreds of hours. I know how long, and lots of visits and worked with a lot of teachers to try to refine this. I know you work with Page, GAE. I know you work with the principal superintendents trying to refine this State Department, and I assure you we do it. And I agree with you. We need to look at a grievance process, and we need to look at some way to refine this thing. Don't throw it out. I agree with you. But you know, one thing I've heard from teachers, they don't want us to throw it out. I've heard teachers say they like the fact that their principal is in their room observing and seeing what they're doing and following. That's important. And they don't want it thrown out. They're just overburdened with so much to do, and we need to find a way to do it. So, Chairman Dixon, I'm going to give you a chance to sum up. 1 minute, or you can have a half a minute, whatever you'd like, sir.
I want to thank those of you who signed on the bill. I also want to thank Mike Vaden, who many of you have met, who did a lot of the groundwork of talking to a lot of folks in the State Department, and we met with Senator Tippins some on it. So those of you sitting up here understand the legislative process. Some out here are new to it. We understand that it is a process. You create something, and then you start watching it morph into something better. Hopefully. Sometimes it morphs into something not quite as nice, but that's the legislative process, and we'll have this sausage ready to be cooked here for too much longer. So
you know, I want to say, Mr. Chairman, I said this, I wished all the committee was here, and you're going to receive a letter from me this week. I'm encouraging you to get a copy of the Senate Bill 364. Be sure you keep this bill. Look at them. You heard what was said today. I plan to have this bill only, not in subcommittee, because I think it's so important that many times in subcommittee, half of us miss what's going on and miss the discussion. This is going to be a lengthy, very deliberate, very in-depth study and discussion of this whole bill, the whole process. We'll get into testing next, so please look at the Senate bill. I understand it's going to be on the floor, I think, Friday. I understand in the Senate may be on the floor Friday. We don't know. But when it comes over sometime next week or the first of the next week, I want some really in-depth study and discussion of this. So be sure you're familiar with what's going on. If you have any questions, I'm sure Chairman Dixon will get with you. We'll be glad to, I'm sure Chairman Tippins will be glad to talk with you. But I want us ready to have some good questions. And I'll tell the members of the audience, please tell your friends, come. I expect you to bring me not complaints, but solutions and recommendations, a way we can make it better, and things we can do. So any other questions for the good for the order? Once again, I want to thank y'all for coming. You raised a good son here. I'm proud of him. We're going to miss him. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.